In the late 19th century, the continent of Africa was a tapestry of ancient kingdoms and diverse societies. The winds of European colonialism, however, were blowing with the force of a hurricane. This era, known as the Scramble for Africa, saw powerful European nations carving up the continent for resources and prestige. Amidst this relentless wave of foreign domination, one nation stood as a bastion of independence: Ethiopia. It was an empire with a rich history stretching back millennia, a proud and resilient people. Italy, a relatively new nation in Europe, yearned for its own colonial empire, its own place in the sun. The gaze fell upon the Horn of Africa, and specifically upon the strategic lands of Ethiopia. The catalyst for conflict was the controversial Treaty of Wuchale, signed in 1889. This document was a masterpiece of diplomatic deception, with two starkly different versions. The Amharic version, read by Emperor Menelik II, suggested a friendly agreement of mutual cooperation. It stated that Ethiopia could, if it chose, use Italy for its foreign correspondence. The Italian version, however, told a different story, one of subjugation. It declared that Ethiopia was now a protectorate of the Kingdom of Italy. When this discrepancy came to light, Emperor Menelik II was resolute. He could not accept such a blatant trick to steal his nation's sovereignty. In 1893, he formally renounced the treaty, setting the stage for war. Italy, feeling its imperial pride wounded, decided to enforce its claim by military might. General Oreste Baratieri, the Italian governor of Eritrea, tasked with leading the invasion. Baratieri was arrogant, underestimating the strength and unity of the Ethiopian people. He believed, like many Europeans of his time, in the inherent superiority of his army. Meanwhile, Emperor Menelik II began a massive mobilization of his forces. He was a master strategist and a charismatic leader who commanded deep loyalty. His wife, Empress Taitu Betul, was a brilliant military mind in her own right. She was instrumental in planning the Ethiopian strategy and motivating the troops. Menelik issued a proclamation that resonated throughout the empire. It called upon every able-bodied man to defend the motherland against the foreign invader. The response was overwhelming, a testament to Ethiopian unity. From all corners of the empire, warriors flocked to the emperor's banner. Farmers, herdsmen, and nobles alike answered the call to arms. Menelik had spent years modernizing his army, purchasing modern rifles and artillery from Europe. His forces were not merely a tribal levy, but a large, reasonably well-equipped army. The Ethiopian army numbered close to 100,000 soldiers. This massive force dwarfed the Italian Expeditionary Army. General Baratieri's army consisted of roughly 17,000 men. They were a mix of Italian regulars and Eritrean colonial troops, known as Askari. Italians were hampered by poor intelligence and a critical lack of supplies. Their maps of the rugged, mountainous region of Adwa were dangerously inaccurate. The Ethiopian forces, in contrast, knew the land intimately. They used the terrain to their strategic advantage, laying traps and ambushes. Empress Taitu's strategy of stripping the local area of provisions put immense pressure on the Italian supply lines. The Italian army was slowly being starved into making a desperate move. Back in Rome, political pressure was mounting on General Baratieri. Prime Minister Francesco Crispi sent a scathing telegram demanding immediate action. He accused Baratieri of cowardice and incompetence. Goaded into action, Baratieri decided to advance on the Ethiopian position. Planned a surprise attack, dividing his army into 3 columns for a night march. The columns were meant to advance in parallel and support each other. But the treacherous terrain and the darkness made a mockery of his plans. The columns became hopelessly lost and separated from one another. Communication between the brigades completely broke down. As the sun rose on March 1st, 1896, the Italian army was in disarray. Ethiopian scouts had watched the entire disastrous night march. They reported the enemy's fragmented positions to the emperor. Menelik seized the golden opportunity. He ordered his massive army to attack the isolated Italian columns. First brigade to be hit was General Alberton's Ascari column. They had marched too far ahead and were completely exposed. Tens of thousands of Ethiopian warriors crashed down upon them. The fighting was ferocious and brutal. Despite their bravery, Alberton's men were overwhelmed by sheer numbers. The next Italian column, under General Arimondi, attempted to advance in support. But they too were met by a furious Ethiopian assault. Emperor Menelik himself was on the battlefield, inspiring his troops. The Ethiopian soldiers fought with a passion born of defending their homeland. General Baratieri, witnessing the collapse of his army, lost all control. The Italian retreat quickly turned into a desperate, chaotic rout. Soldiers threw down their rifles and ran for their lives. The 3rd Italian column under General de Bormida was also encircled and annihilated. By midday, the battle was over. The field was a scene of utter devastation for the Italian army. Thousands of Italian and Ascari soldiers lay dead or wounded. Around 3,000 were taken prisoner. Ethiopia's victory was absolute and undeniable. The news of the defeat at Adwa sent shockwaves through Italy. The government of Prime Minister Crispi collapsed in disgrace. It was a national humiliation of unprecedented scale. For Ethiopia, the victory was a moment of profound national pride. It secured their sovereignty for decades to come. Italy was forced to sign the Treaty of Addis Ababa. This new treaty officially recognized Ethiopia's absolute independence. The Battle of Adwa became a legendary event in African history. It was a powerful symbol of resistance against European imperialism. The victory inspired anti-colonial movements across Africa and the world. It proved that an African army, united and well-led, could defeat a modern European power. The legacy of Adwa is a testament to the enduring spirit of freedom. The battle was a complex interplay of strategy, leadership, and terrain. Menelik's intelligence network was far superior to Italy's. He had agents and sympathizers even within the Italian-held territories. This allowed him to have a clear picture of Italian strengths and weaknesses. The unity of the Ethiopian feudal lords was crucial for the victory. In past conflicts, internal rivalries had often weakened the nation. But facing the existential threat from Italy, they stood together as one. Each Ras brought his own army, swelling the ranks of the imperial force. The role of the common soldier was paramount. They marched for weeks, often with meager supplies, driven by loyalty. Their courage in the face of modern artillery was astounding. The Italian soldiers, many of them young conscripts, were unprepared for the ferocity. They were fighting for a vague colonial ambition, not their homes. Treatment of prisoners after the battle was a complex issue. While many were treated humanely, the fate of the Eritrean Ascari was harsh. Considered traitors by the Ethiopians, many suffered brutal punishments. This aspect remains a dark chapter in the story of the victory. The battle's outcome significantly altered European perceptions of Africa. It shattered the myth of universal European invincibility. For the first time, a non-white nation had defeated a modern European army in a major battle. This event was reported in newspapers from New York to Tokyo. Adwa became a watchword for freedom and self-determination. The strategic genius of Menelik and Teitu became the stuff of legend. They had successfully played the European powers against each other for years. They built an arsenal that gave their soldiers a fighting chance. The logistical planning to feed and supply such a massive army was a feat in itself. Women played a crucial role, not just as leaders like Teitu, but throughout the army. They served as water carriers, medics, and provided moral support. The spirit of the army was a reflection of the entire nation's will to be free. The Italians had expected a quick, decisive campaign. They found instead a determined nation fighting for its very existence. The terrain of Adwa, with its interlocking mountains and hidden valleys, was a natural fortress. The Ethiopians were the masters of this fortress. The Italians were merely intruders, lost in its maze. The battle's memory is preserved in Ethiopian art and song. It is a cornerstone of their national identity. Every year, Ethiopians celebrate the victory at Adwa. It is a national holiday, a day of immense pride and reflection. The story of Adwa is a story of how unity and leadership can triumph over arrogance. It is a reminder that history is not always written by the most powerful. The echoes of the shouts of victory at Adwa still resonate today. It stands as a singular achievement in the history of anti-colonial struggle. The Italian forces were technologically superior in some aspects, particularly in artillery. However, this advantage was nullified by poor deployment and lack of coordination. Ethiopian forces effectively used guerrilla tactics in the lead-up to the main battle. They harassed supply lines and picked off isolated patrols. This constant pressure wore down the morale of the Italian troops. Empress Teitu's personal contingent of soldiers was among the most motivated. She famously declared she would not return without victory. The religious faith of the Ethiopian soldiers was a powerful, motivating factor. They carried sacred tablets, consecrated replicas of the Ark of the Covenant, into battle. This imbued the conflict with the character of a holy war for their faith and freedom. The defeat was so total that it ended Italy's colonial ambitions in Ethiopia for 40 years. It would not be until Mussolini's rise to power that Italy would again invade. But the memory of 1896 would serve as a powerful rallying cry for the resistance then. The Battle of Adwa was a rare and stunning reversal of the colonial tide. It demonstrated that the narrative of inevitable European conquest was a fallacy. The victory was a product of foresight, unity, and immense courage. A proud nation, led by wise rulers, had defended its ancient heritage against overwhelming odds.